Today on the show, we're going to be bringing in part 3 of the Side Hustle Coaching School with Alan and Tallis. This is going to be fun. Welcome to the ultimate crowdsourced personal finance show. This is your Friday Roundup.
You're listening to Choose FI Radio. The blueprint for financial independence lives here. If you're looking to unlock the secrets to financial independence and early retirement, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and join a community of like-minded people who are getting off the hamster wheel and taking control of their lives in the pursuit of financial independence. Choose FI, your home for financial independence online.
All right, Brad. Well, there's going to be a lot covered today. I know we're going to try and talk about our takeaways from this past week's episode with MK, Passion to Profit, the journey of self-publishing. And then we also have all this amazing content to present with the third part of the Side Hustle Coaching series with Alan and Tallis. But before we do that, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing quite well. Yeah, everything's going well, Jonathan. Cannot complain. I certainly enjoyed this episode with MK and can't wait to get into it. And yeah, it's always great to have Alan back from Pop-Up Business School. This entire series that he's doing with Tallis is really fun to watch from afar. So yeah, I can't wait to bring that to the audience. But yeah, what's going on in your world?
Well, probably the biggest thing is I do have a DIY. I guess it's kind of a fail to report. In DIY world, it's rarely binary, 1 or 0, success or failure. Rather, there are all these kind of Pinterest fails, where you got a result. It wasn't like a perfect result, but it did pass the threshold for success. We were removing wallpaper. So we decided to kind of give our kitchen a little bit of a revamp, dress it up a little bit. We got the paint and then realized that we had to tackle this wallpaper challenge. And so there's like a solution that you put on your wall and you have this little kind of bristly like brush that you put over there to poke tiny holes in the wallpaper so the adhesive remover can get in there. And we got through with the first layer of wallpaper only to realize that there's a second layer of wallpaper. And then what happened, we were like, well, that's going to be too much work. Let's just ignore that. And we were just going to paint over it directly. But we noticed that the adhesive remover had started to get through the second layer of wallpaper, and in certain areas that had started to bubble as well. So we had like 2 layers of wallpaper in some areas, 1 layer of wallpaper in other areas, and then nothing. And in fact, it had actually ripped off some of the drywall. So there were these massive kind of divots in areas of the wall. And not knowing better, we just decided to put primer over it and then just paint over it. So after the fact, I'm talking to Tom and he tells me, yeah, we had wallpaper and I tried to take it off myself and it was just too much work. So we hired someone to come in and do it. And, it took them 2 days and then they applied a drywall mud to it and got it all evened out. And I said, whoa, wait a second. Drywall mud? What is this? This is a thing? I didn't know this existed. And apparently, we just finished our entire project without realizing that there's an actual product that painters that actually know what they're doing use to have your wall be even before you paint it. So I've got this gorgeous painted wall with a few blemishes kind of in where it had to deal with this kind of multi-tiered textured layering. That's what we're calling the fail, multi-tiered textured layering.
To make it very official sounding.
Yes, absolutely. So that was our DIY fail of the week. Yet we thrive.
Does the color look nice? Was it a win?
Yeah, I would say it's still a win. We're still pretty happy with it. We do like doing projects together as a family. We can always throw an extra layer of paint on there. But your public service announcement for the week is if you're removing wallpaper, there is a product, I guess it's called drywall mud, that you can use to even it out if you have to remove wallpaper. All these houses from the 70s and 80s, I don't know at what point in time as a society we determined that flower print wallpaper was the way to go and we should cover everything in it. But I will say that 20 years later, that idea did not age well. And we have at least gotten most of it down.
Yeah, I'm pretty fortunate that none of the houses I've owned have had wallpaper. So at least that's something. But yeah, painting is one of those things that I just personally hate. It's funny because Laura actually loves to paint. It's just one of her things. But I have sworn that I will never paint another room as long as I live. And I guess this speaks to, what do you think is worth hiring for? And what do you think is worth as a DIY project, right? And I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. I mean, I think at this point in my life, painting is something I am not willing to do anymore. I know that it sounds terrible coming out of my mouth, but I just really despise it. It's just so exacting and it takes forever. And I don't know. I mean, I think you can generally hire, I think the person for our new house quoted us at like about $100 or $150 for a room. And I'm thinking it would take me an entire day or 2 days to do a room just to set it up with all that infernal blue tape and getting the exact edgers and all this stuff. And I'm like, $100 doesn't sound so bad.
Dude, I hear you. Before you told me the price quote on what it would cost, I was thinking, no, I think I would still paint. I will never take down wallpaper again. Like if I purchased a home or moved into a home that had wallpaper everywhere, that would just be baked into it that I will hire someone out to do that. But I'm still relatively okay with painting. It doesn't take too long. I also like the aspect of picking out the color palettes. That sounds a little weird, even as I say that out loud, but I do like the old supreme flexibility that you get with color choices now. And so I don't know. I'm not totally ready to write it off, but at $100 a pop for a room, that really doesn't sound too bad. Plumbing though, plumbing terrifies me, especially when you have the idea of you get started halfway in the project and then you find out that you just have a leaky faucet or main that you can't shut off. Or if you do shut it off, you just have no water in your house until you get somebody to, come in and repair it for you. And to get a plumber on demand could take you days or be incredibly expensive. So I think plumbing is something that I have just decided I will always be willing to write off. So I don't know. Those are my thoughts. But generally, I like to think of myself as a DIYer. I like learning new skills. And so for the most part, I tend to just want to do it myself.
Very cool. I certainly hear you. And yeah, when you're describing pulling off that second layer of wallpaper, it reminded me when we just had new floors installed, I guess in our old house now, we pulled up this old vinyl flooring and it sounded great. I was helping the guy that I had hired just to make it easier. And since I was basically paying him by the hour, I was there helping and it was saving money. So it was like a hybrid DIY. And we pulled this up and there were just thousands of staples that were just ever so slightly out of the ground. And I had to literally go through and hammer every single one of these things down. It took hours upon hours, but like in my weird organized mind, like I kind of liked it in a weird perverse way. Like it was.
I can just imagine you getting the bubble wrap as a kid and 1, 2, 3, 4. I will finish this.
I don't care if it's 10,000, it's getting finished. But yeah, so this was one of those things, but it obviously saved a lot of money because he would have had to have done it and I wanted it done properly. So I just went through and it was, like I said, kind of oddly enjoyable.
I really do want to do a DIY episode because I think there actually is a lot of opportunity here. And I was going to bring on Tinian Crawford, who has written on our site under the moniker DIY-Defy. He also has a blog at Captain DIY. He has an incredible story. And actually, as a tradesman, there is incredible opportunity to make really, really good money, above median income money, pursuing one of these trades. And basically, it's just, can you do the work? You never have to worry about it getting outsourced. You never have to worry about the robots taking your job. It will always be needed. So I think that's just an episode that's worth exploring. It's one that we want to come back to in the fall. But hey, let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about this past week's episode with MK. What was your biggest takeaway?
Yeah, I mean, there were certainly a lot of takeaways. I think my absolute favorite quote, and I'd love for this to become part of the Choosify lexicon, is our minimalism muscles were being flexed. I mean, how cool is that? And I think they were trying to find that extreme. And through early retirement extreme, right? I've never seen people actually follow through on that. I know that sounds silly. I think everybody reads that site and says, oh, wow, that's a little much, and then tries to dial it back and find their happy point. But they really went for it. And I thought that was pretty neat. When she said, quote, we had a good why to do this. And from my perspective, that was to make Jason's life and MK's life easier. His commute was going to be dramatically shorter when they basically found this condo right next door to her new job, cut his commute in half. They made these decisions not only to save money, but to make their lives better and easier. And I think so many of us just in American society try to find that amazing McMansion out in the suburbs that all of our friends are going to be jealous of. But that's not the way that we want to live in the FI community. We want to live with our happiness and our well-being at heart in every decision. I think they did that probably better than maybe almost any guest we've had on the show to date.
Yeah, and MK and Jason are actually the admins of our local group in Tampa, Florida. And one of the things that really resonated with me is they're kind of pioneers of looking for a community. You know, I think the FI community has really risen up over the last 3 or 4 years. Now it's becoming ever easier to find a group of like-minded people that are pursuing this, that kind of have the same mindset. But in 2012, 2013, there wasn't any of that. There were a few people that were reading these blogs and consuming this content, and then frankly didn't have anybody to share it with, anybody that got it or understood it. And you could kind of hear as she was living her story out with us that her and Jason were early adopters of this. They wanted to find people in their area that they could talk to about this stuff. And one of the things that just struck me is, even still, it's kind of early days. I mean, if you want to find a community of like-minded people, that has gotten way easier. You can join a local group. You can immediately have 30, 40, 50 people that are eager to talk about these concepts or these ideas, and it changes the societal norm. It doesn't change it at the mainstream level. You're always going to be considered a frugal weirdo. But if you have 5 people that are pursuing this life in kind of a similar manner to you, what mainstream thinks is normal doesn't really matter anymore. You've anchored yourself, and it just makes everything easier. So it's kind of cool to hear what they wanted back in the day that they couldn't find has over the last several years become that they've actually helped build it and have it for themselves, and also help other people have it as well.
Yeah, and it is interesting to see this community grow, certainly online and then in real life with these local meetups. And I know some people are even thinking about making FI communities, right? Like Stephen, the organizer of Camp FI, is trying to do that down in Warner Robins, Georgia. And I think our friends Marla and Bianca actually bought, as crazy as this sounds, Mr. Money Mustache linked to this, and Marla had sent it to me in a message, but they bought a couple of tiny houses that are actually train cabooses. Have you seen this, Jonathan?
No, they haven't shared the link with me. That's incredible. I didn't know they did that.
Yeah, it's really pretty wild. Bianca has it as an article on her site, missmazuma.com. Yeah, I think their plan is to buy up a bunch of these, evidently like in this one area. I don't know what this is, honestly. It sounds crazy to me, but there are these train cars that have been turned into houses, and there's a whole community of them. So why can't that be a FI, Airbnb, or even true community, right? Like that would be kind of neat. So I think people have this idea. It's hard to bring this to true fruition. It takes some pioneers to really say, hey, the 10 of us, the 10 families or the 10 couples or the 10 individuals are going to move down and create this community, right? There has to be that first mover. And I think that's the hard part, but it's just kind of a fun, whimsical thing to talk about now. But who knows? Someday there might be true communities where you have FI-centric people living in close proximity. And like, how powerful would that be? It really boggles the mind to think all the benefits, not only from a community, social, but also fitness and financial and entrepreneurial, right? Like think of all the businesses that can be spawned if you had a couple hundred FI people living in one random little community. That would be remarkable. So anyway, kind of pie in the sky right now, but community is what we're always talking about. And I think obviously the local groups are the biggest way to get into the FI community right now.
You know, and speaking of quotes, Brad, something that I had written down was, don't let the assumptions of your community hold you back. I mean, I don't know why, but that was incredibly powerful and really stood out to me.
Yeah, that one stood out to me as well. I think that was really important. And it's all about the frame. Who is your community? Who are those people that you're spending the most time with? Who's influencing you, either subtly or overtly? And who are you influencing? So MK and Jason were worried about, I think the example was selling their car, that people would think we were crazy people, she said. Whereas when they actually did it, people were really excited. And they asked them about moving close to work and selling the car and how it would work. And sure, none of them actually followed through on it. You know, unfortunately, that's the way the real world works a lot of the time, is people might be excited, but then they're like, oh, that's a little bit too much. But it's really cool that she had these fears, but they were unfounded. But she found people who actually thought it was neat and were excited that they had the guts to do it. So I thought that was very cool. And of course, this always ties back into community and the FI community. We don't hold each other back. We enable each other to thrive. we enable each other to absolutely thrive. So I think that's why this community is so important, and really the people you spend time with. It's crucial.
And the other thing to me about her story that just really, really stood out was just this idea of persistence. Persistence is a concept that we were introduced to by Vincent Puglisi in episode 59, Freelance to Freedom. And I think what he said is patience and persistence is the key. And in his case, it was all about getting an interview and getting a job interview and getting access. And patience is one thing, but it also requires persistence. Persistence is that key ingredient. And if you think about MK's story, she's now written 1, 2, 3, 4 books. Each time, the first book maybe wasn't an unmitigated success, right? It didn't go viral and take over the world, but she didn't say that's failure. She's pursuing her passion because this is her passion. It's something that lights her up. How much money she makes isn't the ultimate objective. And because she was willing to be persistent with it, with each additional book that she wrote, she notices that there's almost it's a rising tide where each additional book actually lifts up the past book, someone that enjoys the latest book, and she's probably getting better with each book that she writes. But each book highlights the previous book that she's written. There's some intentionality there, but at the same time, it's a theme that we see not only in writing books and self-publishing, but also in the blogging world. It's a common theme that we've seen with the bloggers that we've interviewed, and we ask them, what is the key to their success? And they almost inevitably highlight the fact that they were consistent with their publishing. They built that engagement, that loyalty with their audience over time. And inevitably, with each new article that they wrote that got additional traction, it actually sends traffic back to the older articles and it lifts everything up. So it was really interesting to see that carry over into the self-publishing world.
Yeah, and I'd like to take a little reframe on the patience and persistence. I think patience has certain connotations of kind of sitting around and waiting. I don't think that's what Vincent's saying, and I certainly don't think that's where I come from when I hear that quote. To me, patience means it's going to take time, but that doesn't mean sit around and wait and don't let the world act on you, but you have to reframe this and take action. Everything relies on you doing things. Now, where the patience comes in is that this is not going to happen overnight. Success doesn't happen overnight. It is about patience and persistence in that regard, but it's not about sitting idly by. It's about getting off your couch and doing things every single day that are going to help you reach your goals. So that is really crucial, but you have to remember things are not going to be a wild lightning success and viral success overnight. That's just not the way the world generally works. So that patience and persistence is important to keep in the back of your mind. And yeah, like you said, Jonathan, we have seen multiple of our guests talk about why are their blogs successful? Why are they like Michelle from Making Sense of Sense, making millions of dollars a year? And it's because they produce content reliably and consistently over years and years. And it's ultimately going to be decades, right? Like Michelle is getting close to that point. So it's about producing content. And like MK said, with each successive book release, she got a bump on all her prior books. Life works this way a lot of times. It works that way with websites, with Google, right, Jonathan? It's your website gets a reputation by Google based on its length of history, its consistency, the number of links that come back to your site, which is other people passing a little piece of their reputation to you. All right. So these are the factors that Google looks at when they build a site. And what it does is a site like Michelle's gets thousands of links incoming to her site. So it's like a rising tide lifts all boats. So Google looks at her entire site as more reputable, and therefore every single article, every one of those hundreds and hundreds of articles from, again, that consistency, all of those hundreds of articles get more traffic to each and every single one of them every day. And that is a remarkable thing. So I think that's where the consistency comes in. It's a really interesting lesson, and it's cool to see it across these different areas.
This is such an interesting kind of tangent, and I apologize for this, but let me nerd out for a second. There is something called the Google Sandbox. Now, Google denies this profusely, but let me explain what it is and why it's a real thing. The Google Sandbox, and this is an article that popped up on my feed dated July 5th, 2018, but there's been a lot of articles about this over the last several years, refers to an alleged filter that prevents new websites from ranking in Google's top results. So you create a new website, you create the most awesome article of all time on a particular topic, and the only thing you show up for, in fact, you don't even show up for your own brand name. So you have this domain, awesomewebsite.com. When someone types in awesome website, yours doesn't show up anywhere. Like, what's going on? I'm named. This is my name. Well, the Google sandbox basically is theoretically this probation period where articles, you're not going to show up in the results. And it's almost like you need to last a couple months before Google kind of allows you to even come into the search results. Now, they say it doesn't exist, but when people were probing them, they say, well, it doesn't exist, but what we do have is filters that keep websites that are brand new from ranking higher than others, to which everybody on Twitter basically announced, that's a sandbox. You do have a sandbox. So basically, Google does have a sandbox. They just don't call it a sandbox. All that being said, part of this is patience, right? I mean, you're going to need to wait that out. You're going to continue to need to put good content into the space that you're working. And over time, you're rewarded for that. And every article that you've written is given more authority. And then that authority is passed back to your older content that didn't rank on day one. I can tell you, Brad, when we first started ChooseFI, you could type ChooseFI in the first week. You didn't show up anywhere on Google. Even though we had ChooseFI.com for the first week, we didn't show up anywhere in the search results. And then for the first month afterwards, if you did ChooseFI as 2 words, we didn't show up anywhere in the search results. A couple months after that, we started to reliably show up for our own brand name. It wasn't overnight success, but we had patience that this is a process, and we had persistence in that we were willing to say, okay, we don't show up today, but what would get us to show up? And one, it's continuing to create new content, and then just doing all the little things that go into growing your brand. And part of it's just persistence, being able to wait it out and get out of Google's probationary period.
Oh, man. Jonathan, I literally had to put my microphone on mute because I was laughing so loud that I'm picturing you. How many times did you search ChooseFI or ChooseFI 2 words over those first 3 months?
I said the website's broken. The internet is broken. It's not working. It has one function to show the result for a keyword. We are the keyword. Nobody else is this keyword, and we're not showing up for it. What is wrong?
Oh, man. Yeah, I suspect you searched that probably 400 times.
I'm pretty sure you got a Facebook message the first day we showed up in the results for our own name. It was a big deal.
Big day in ChooseFI world.
That's
Very
right.
Cool.
And the last thing that I wanted to spend just a minute on as we talk about MK's episode is this idea of the talent stack for her, because she has done a little bit of a pivot here on the content that she's actually producing. So she's a great writer. She loves personal finance and she loves financial independence, but she loves fiction. She doesn't really enjoy reading nonfiction books. So instead of being forced into the same lane as everybody else, she says, how about I write a book that has undertones of this financial independence community that I'm so passionate about, but I don't try to fit it into a nonfiction box. Let me write a book that's fascinating at multiple levels. It's fascinating because it's a book on terrorists living in your suburban neighborhood. It has a murder plot built into it. And it's also fascinating because if you know how to read it, if you understand the context, you will see all sorts of FI themes built into it. So you'll have, your people on the outside reading it one way, but people that are inside the FI community reading it a totally different way. She's like, that would be compelling and interesting to me. And I think there's an audience for it. So I love that she did that and she wrote a book directly targeting that talent stack.
Yeah, I think that is a great takeaway for the audience is when you're looking to create a business or just do something entrepreneurial like this, look at your passions, look at your skills and your attributes. And like we've called it here, this talent stack, and just try to look at a problem a little bit differently. My mind immediately goes to my original website, richmondsavers.com, where I help people with getting started with travel rewards. So this was back in the day. I don't do this anymore just because I don't have the time for it. But I would help people with one-on-one coaching for getting started with travel rewards and figuring out a trip that they wanted to take and how they would get there with reward points and what card or cards they may have to open, et cetera. I would literally get on the phone with people. I would email them. I would work with them one-on-one. They wouldn't pay me, but if they happen to use my affiliate links to sign up for any cards or products on my site, I would get paid some money. So I looked at it as this kind of like accountant's puzzle of how can I turn fairly small website traffic for the site at the time into something that could earn a decent bit of money that would be worth my time. And also bringing in my passion of helping people with travel rewards. And then it turned into Disney World when my kids started wanting to go there, and how can we use rewards points to go there? And it was just amazing to see the evolution of this. But it was always, all right, let's look at this problem a little bit differently. Whereas many sites get hundreds of thousands or millions of visitors and can make some money just by the law of large numbers, in essence. A tiny little percentage of people are going to click on their links and they might make some money, right? I didn't have that luxury at Richmond Savers. So I looked at that problem a little bit differently, but I also brought in these passions and these talents that I had. So I think that's how people should approach different business opportunities. How can you get into something that there might be these behemoths, right? In my case, there was the Points Guy and Million Mile Secrets, and I could never compete with them, but I could compete because I had time and expertise. So I thought that was kind of a pretty cool rethink on it.
And you know what, Brad? We actually had someone that reached out to us recently asking us if we could do some one-on-one coaching and kind of as a paid service. And it's not something that we're offering currently, just frankly due to time constraints. But it made me realize that we have so many people in our audience that are very interested, and they either are financial coaches or they are interested in becoming financial coaches. And in the case of people that are interested in becoming financial coaches, they're thinking, well, I want to do it, but I don't know how I would market myself. I don't know how I would stand out. I don't know how I would attract steady clientele. And what comes to my mind is, especially in the context of a side hustle where you're not opening up a storefront, the biggest thing that you can do is just grow your brand, grow your personal and online presence. And one of the ways to do that is to create content. So if you're passionate about this, then just create a blog around some of the stuff that you're really passionate about. Maybe create a YouTube channel where you post occasional videos. Maybe go on to other people's sites and do some guest posts. Build your authority in a particular space. And then what you find as you start to build your personal brand is that it becomes increasingly easy for people to find you, because people do, like, no matter how much you're giving away for free, there will always be a large percentage of people that want dedicated one-on-one service, someone to look at their specific situation, and they're willing to pay for that service. We've seen that over and over again. That's just an interesting frame as you're thinking about, how do I take something that is something that I'm passionate about and turn it into something profitable? And when someone approached us about doing this coaching, it kind of blindsided me, because it's not something that we've marketed or asked for. It's not a business model that we have really pursued, but there it is. And as you guys know, we always try to support the authors and the content creators and the people that come onto our show. So we have went ahead and purchased several copies of MK's book, Enemies of Peace. If you would like to win a copy of that book, we are going to include it for the next several weeks as part of our drawing. Just follow the review process that we always tell you about at the end of every show. Send us an email to feedback@ChooseFI, letting us know that you left a review and what screen name you left it under, and that you'd be interested in a copy of that book. We would love to enter you in the drawing and hook you up with that. So very, very cool. All right, without any further ado, let's go ahead and hop into part 3 of the Side Hustle Coaching series with Alan and Tallis. Back in episode 30, Alan Donegan introduced the concept of building a side hustle or a business. Then Tallis actually won our coaching challenge, and Alan has been working one-on-one with her. We've already released the first 2 episodes. I would certainly recommend that you start with episode 30, where Alan introduces the concept of the side hustle. The first episode of the Side Hustle Coaching series was episode 56, and then the second part in that series was episode 77R. This is the long-awaited third part of that series. What's really fascinating about this is at the end of the second call, we put basically a request out to our community saying, this is what we're trying to build. And if you think that in some way you can help with this project, just reach out to us, let us know. Lean on your network when you have one, and let's see what we can build together. What's amazing is that right after that call, someone from our community actually did reach out to us. It was Chris, who, as it happens, works for Northwestern, probably one of the best hospitals in the country. And in fact, he is in the fundraising department for their foundation, and he oversees all the fundraising for the neurosciences, which include Parkinson's. He just thought, obviously, this would be an incredible fit. It's a win-win on multiple levels. The Parkinson's patients would benefit from the exercise and movement. The hospital wins because the patients are happier and healthier. All the things that we talked about with Tallis. It's a win for Tallis because she's going to get access to what is absolutely, by any metric, a world-class healthcare institution. And it's a win for the donors because you get to be a part of something that's it's very cool, and it's getting built in front of you. So that all happened in the background. Obviously, it's a huge opportunity, but it kind of sets the stage for this particular conversation, which is where we have two interested parties, but at some point in time, a pitch still has to be made. And that's kind of where we're at now. Alan and Tallis are going to be working together to talk about the process of actually building your first pitch. And so to help me with this, I have my co-host Alan here with me today. How you doing, buddy?
Hello. How's it going?
It's going great. And my other co-host today is Tallis. Tallis, how you doing?
Great. Good to be here, guys.
All right. So Alan and Tallis, a lot of stuff's kind of happened offline. Could you maybe give us the short abbreviated version of where we're at and what needs to happen next? Alan, maybe you go first.
Tallis has been speaking to the hospital, working on who she's going to pitch to and working out what she's actually going to sell to them. So I think that's been fascinating. Tallis, I would love to have an update from Tallis as well, because it's been a little while since we've spoken, but we've exchanged emails. What's been going on, Tallis?
So I have been looking at expanding this program beyond the current class that I'm teaching here. And yes, very exciting to be contacted by Chris from Northwestern. So after speaking with him initially about bringing this program to them, I've now been in contact with more of their program directors on site at this facility, the people that are actually handling the pilot programming that they have the money to do. So I've been having a couple conversations with them about what their needs are, specifically for this one population, and that's really allowing me to start building something beyond my current class.
So we've got an opportunity. Northwestern are interested. We're booked in to go and see them. Now we've got to go in and have that first meeting where we sell them on the idea, get it signed and get it sorted into a pilot program.
Perfect. So I think what we could do today is maybe talk about the process of building a pitch. At some point in time, if you're a business owner, you are in the field of sales. And honestly, one of the things that determines your success is how quickly you realize that. Maybe we could spend some time talking about the elements that make up a good pitch.
Absolutely. And sales is one of the fundamental things that every business has to get to grips with. And actually, in any area of life, you're selling things, whether you're selling ideas to your kids, teaching them about FI, whether you're selling in your business, whether you're selling your partner on whether to go for Indian food or Mexican food this evening. We're constantly selling. It's ingrained in what we do. And there's one thing I know. If you can't sell your business, you don't get any customers. And if you don't get any customers, you don't earn any money. Being able to sell that business and get it out there really does change everything. And with sales comes the opportunity to help other people. Tallis in particular, her business helps other people. But for that to happen, she's got to sell it to someone to get the money to be able to help people. That's actually one of the fundamental things I wanted to start today with, was sales is the process of finding someone with a problem that you can fix and then explaining that you can fix that problem and creating the opportunity to sell. Sales is not what a lot of people think sales is. I mean, if I was to say the word salesman to you, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
I think of a car lot somewhere off the interstate.
Yes, or a pyramid scheme or something like that.
Exactly. And sales has a really bad, icky reputation. When I first launched my business, I had exactly that problem. I wanted to sell, but I felt sales was getting someone to do something against their own will. So I was self-sabotaging from the start. I just struggled with it completely. It wasn't until I had a revelation that everyone I sold on buying a pop-up business school course, every time I sold a pop-up course, it allowed me to have 40, 50, 60 people that I could help build businesses and make money doing what they love. And every time I sold, I helped more people. So for Tallis, every time she sells, we fill a class full of people who have the problems she can fix, and we make their life little bit better. So for me, sales, and actually it doesn't matter what you're selling. If you're selling a phone that helps people stay in touch, if you're selling entertainment that makes people's lives richer, everything you're selling should add value to other people's lives. So go out there and sell it and make the world a little bit better each time.
And it's another way of reframing it too, is when you start talking about it in terms of solve the problem, right? Instead of trying to just come up with an idea, just start thinking about everything in terms of solving a problem, making something simpler. That's a much easier frame to work from.
Absolutely. Netflix solves the problem of boredom in the evenings.
Very efficiently, I might add.
Very efficiently, sometimes too efficiently.
Yeah.
I could be doing other stuff. But board games solve entertainment and education. There's always something. It doesn't matter what it is. If a product is really to fly, it solves a problem. When we're going into pitch, having that belief that what you do really helps actually empowers you to be able to sell it as you need to sell it.
So let's take that idea, that concept, and let's focus it in on Tallis's product. Tallis, what is the problem that we're solving with your business model?
So I am utilizing a program called PD Moves. So the PD stands for Parkinson's Dance Moves, which is a dance program designed for people with Parkinson's disease and their caregivers. And the benefits of this course are really threefold. First, it provides a movement opportunity for people with Parkinson's to maintain their strength, improve their balance, and work on other physical symptoms that they're combating as a result of various medications that they're taking. Emotionally, it provides them an opportunity to connect with music, to connect with other people in the class that also have Parkinson's. So it's a shared experience for them socially and emotionally to better their outlook as they are looking forward to coming to class each week and held accountable by the other participants. And then the third thing is it offers them, in many cases, an opportunity to connect with that caregiver that they are coming to class with. So in many times, this is their spouse, and the dance class, utilizing these dance forms really neutralizes that relationship and allows the opportunity for them to have a different kind of interaction with each other than they might day to day dealing with the disease.
And can I just point out, Alan, before you riff off that is much more polished and clear than it was on our first coaching call. It's clear to me just from how you were able to roll through that this is something that you're thinking through in a very specific way now, whereas before you were grappling with exactly what it was and how to present it.
Yeah, Alan's already doing a really great job, isn't he?
He sure is. Little plug there, buddy.
It was absolutely fabulous. And actually, Tallis used one of the key pitching tools, which is called triads. And triads, I know what you're thinking, Jonathan. It is not the Chinese mafia. Triad is speaking in groups of 3. And that's one of the most powerful structures you can do your pitch in. And Tallis did that really beautifully. There's 3 things that what I do adds to the people I work with. And it is a beautiful structure to pitch.
I didn't know there was a name for it, although it's not particularly complicated, but I've been doing that for the last year. I've always known that there needs to be 3 bullet points. What are the 3 bullet points? I had no idea it was a technique.
It's a really powerful one for answering tough questions, for structuring your pitch, and for making what you're saying memorable to the audience.
Very, very cool.
Do you see what I did there?
I did. No, I did. You snuck it by me. But I think if you had only given me 2 answers, I would have invalidated it at face value.
And it's an incredibly powerful technique. One of the things that actually is really important in pitching is not to overload the person you're talking to. And there's a tendency for anyone selling to try and explain everything in every detail. The problem with that is you overload the other person and they end up remembering less. So what we want to do is keep it short, keep it concise, keep it powerful, and make sure they can remember it. And you do that with triads. If I was to hit you tonight with 27 top tips on how to pitch and present, how many would you remember?
3.
Probably less, because I've overloaded you. Yeah, the human brain is not capable of remembering all of that information. It can hold on comfortably to a few clear pieces. So one of the keys to pitching is not overloading the person you're talking to. If you give them too much information, they actually end up not remembering as much. So we've got to be very clear, very concise, and make sure it hits the target. And one way to do that is to think through what are the key points you want to give the other person. Now, there is always a danger when going into pitch that you think you've got an hour with the person and you turn up and they're running late, things have changed, and they just say, you've got 10 minutes. What do I need to know? And that's a nightmare situation for the person who's gone into pitch. Absolute nightmare situation. So we definitely want to prepare for that. And the key is to answer the question, if there's one thing you wanted the person to know that you're going to pitch, what is the one thing they need to know? Like out of everything, if they left with that one message, you would be happy. So Tallis, like what's the one message that you want the hospital to get?
That PD moves will positively affect their patients with Parkinson's.
Awesome.
Is that too brief?
It's fantastic. I guess I would add in a little bit of how.
Right.
The headline is it will positively impact your Parkinson's patients by
enabling them to have the tools to move better, feel better, and connect better with their partner.
That was beautiful. Jonathan, I feel like a round of applause is in order. Do you have that as a sound effect?
I can talk to our sound engineer, see if he can put something in there.
That was fantastic. If you can deliver that in 30 seconds, which you did beautifully, then they can understand the message and then you can unpack it from there and they can ask questions and you can grow. It's definitely one of the fears that you go in and you run out of time without getting to the key message. So being able to deliver it as you did was fantastic. So let's just have a look at how do 99% of corporate pitches start?
Don't they introduce themselves? Are you saying they introduce themselves instead of the product or service?
Yeah, most of the times they say their name.
Right.
Hello, my name is.
Mm-hmm.
And then something along the lines of, well, what do they say after that? They introduce themselves.
And I'm here today to tell you about...
Exactly. Exactly. And it kind of goes something like this. Hello, I'm Alan. I'm here today to talk to you about presenting. I've been in presenting for 22 years. I've got offices in Basingstoke, Alabama, and Albuquerque. I've worked for many big customers, and I'm really excited to talk to you about pitching and presenting.
That was strong, man. That was really strong.
Is it a good start?
Yeah, I can see why you're on that side of the microphone.
Muppet style. I like it.
So let's do this. If you ever go to a presentation and someone introduces their name right at the start, do you ever remember their name?
Not usually.
Or about halfway through their talk or halfway through their pitch, when you actually find they're interesting, you have to lean to the person next to you and go, what was their name? Or you have to look it up in the brochure in front of you. No one ever remembers your name at the start. And actually, it puts you on a back foot if you do that stuff right at the start. You're kind of wasting your time with that particular bit. What are the two most important points in any presentation?
What you're selling them and why it benefits them.
I was going to say the close.
Yeah, the beginning.
Oh, yeah. The call to action. There you go.
Yes. The very first thing, because it sets the energy, sets the mood, and gets people attention. Or the very last thing, which is the close, actually what you want people to do. But normally people waste the opening on stuff that no one really cares about, like how many years they've been in business or what they're there to talk to them about. And then they waste the ending as well. How do 99% of presentations or pitches end?
Thank you.
You can reach me at...
Yeah, thank you very much. Maybe some contact details or the absolute killer. Thank you very much. Any questions? Any questions?
Hopeful hand in the air.
Yep. Questions? Thanks for coming. Is that a good ending?
Not the way you're framing it.
It absolutely kills it. And even if you do get questions at the end, the chances are that the question might not be, it might be someone asking a question because they don't want to hire you, or it might be someone asking a question that's not relevant. And that's what they remember you for. So I would never, ever end with Q&A. Never. It's actually one of the most important parts of the presentation, and you should take control of the end of your presentation or pitch. Let's just have a look at that. Like, sometimes people say when you come in and work with them that they want you to do a 10-minute pitch and then 10 minutes Q&As. or they want you to do your pitch and then they'll ask you some questions afterwards. I always work to avoid that. Sometimes you can't help but they ask you for it. And what I would do is I do my pitch and they actually stop sort of 80, 90% of the way through my pitch. And I say something along the lines of, right, I've got time for a couple of questions before I wrap up and leave you with what I think is the most important thing from today. By doing that, what do I set up is coming?
The close.
The close. And actually, the danger is if you get to the Q&A bit, some of the people you're pitching to, they will zone out and stop listening because they've had the most important bit. So if you want to keep people engaged, you need to know something is coming at the end. Mm-hmm. And you should definitely control the ending of your presentation.
Okay, I have a question about that, Alan. What if when you're in your question and answer session, someone's question actually is your most important point? Has that imploded your final point or taken away from the power of your close?
It could be that way. If their final question is on my closing point, I actually quite welcome it and say, funny you should say that. It's exactly what I wanted to end on.
So you use that as the hook to get back to the close.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool.
Exactly. But I always want to end that close. Tallis just moments ago gave us the one thing she wanted people to remember. So for me, that's the close. If there's one thing I wanted you to remember from the pitch from us talking today, is I would love to do this with you because it helps your PD patients too, and then deliver that close right at the end. And I guess we've got two different bits here. We've got pitching to a group where you might close like that. Or if you're pitching to an individual or you're selling it to one or two people, your close actually should be the question about how do we move this forwards, or what's the next step, or some kind of question that gets them thinking about what happens next. We did a program in Wales, in Newport, and we had an absolutely lovely lady called Liz who did Reiki healing, which is energy healing. And during the pop-up business school, she was doing demos for people of what she did. So she would do the service. They would really enjoy it. At the end, she would say, did you like it? They would say yes. There would be an awkward moment, and that would be the end of it. And she came over to me at the end of the day and said, I've given like 5 or 10 demos of my service, but no one's bought. What's going wrong? And my first question was, did you ask them to buy? She kind of looked at me a bit sheepishly and said, well, I asked them if they like it, which is lovely, but that doesn't actually lead you them where you want to go. And actually what she needed to do was say, well, if you enjoyed it, would you like to book your first session? And if you can imagine me leaning in, staring you in the eyes and going silent at that point.
It's a strong look, Alan.
Yes, you can see it right now with the raised eyebrow. But that pause is the most critical part of the end. The problem that people have is the nerves when they're doing that close. And what do people do when they get nervous?
They rush, they speed up.
And then they fill the gaps.
Mm-hmm.
And if you fill the gaps, the other person doesn't have the chance to answer. So
Right.
The first time I ever pitched to Microsoft, right at the end of the meeting, the gentleman I was pitching to, his name's Nazar, really nice guy. He looked at me and said, so Alan, how much are your courses? And there's that moment where you have to tell them the price. And my stomach was doing somersaults. My heart was leaping out of my mouth. And I had to pause, look at him. And I said, the course is £950. And I just wanted to fill the gap. I could see his face doing movements, thinking, I've said the wrong price. I've said the wrong price. Say something. Ditch my price. Say something. You really want the business. And it took every ounce of my strength just to shut up and stay silent. And one of the most important parts at the end is to look at the other person and say, I'd really love to work with you. How do we make this real?
How much space is there between those two sentences? And is there a response required in the middle?
Possibly not in the middle, but the pause at the end is the bit. And it's that space for them to answer. So whatever the next action is you want, we need to drive and then leave the pause, stare them in the eyes at the end. And the close is one of the most important bits that gets rushed. there was actually a rather interesting survey of whether or not salespeople asked for the order. What percentage of salespeople do you think ask for the order?
I'm going to go with 30%.
Yeah, I was going to say like 25.
This particular study found that only 40% of salespeople even ask for the order. Most people don't even ask for the order once. And I found that absolutely unbelievable. How do you expect someone to buy from you unless you ask them? And most salespeople would deliver their pitch, deliver what they were selling. It would come to the end and it would say, thank you for listening. And that would be it.
Mm-hmm.
And it strikes me that if you're selling something and you're taking up, 20, 30 minutes of somebody's time, and at the end, you don't make a call to action, you don't ask for the sale, you've just wasted everybody's time.
Absolutely.
Do you think that the salesperson assumes that it's implied, so they don't need to actually ask?
I think that they're nervous and they don't want to know the answer. So they'd rather not answer.
Yeah, it's intimidating.
And not know for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But if you don't ask, and my mum drummed this one into me when I was younger, but I still didn't realize it until mid-30s. If you don't ask, you don't get. And she repeated that to me so many times, but I didn't truly understand it until mid-30s.
Did you think that in your mid-30s, did you have any realization that in your mid-30s that was going to be your biggest life lesson?
No, I did not. But thank you for drumming it in, Mum. I had no idea that was going to be such a powerful lesson to help me in sales and my business. Is just directly asking. So there's a really important point, Tallis, right at the end where you've got to ask for exactly what you want. But that means you've got to know exactly what you want. So what do you want to ask for at the end of your pitch with the hospital?
I want to ask them to set a date for me to come and deliver this workshop.
Fantastic. And how are you going to ask that?
When can we set this up? What works for your schedule? I mean, questions like that, talking about what's getting us a date on the calendar.
I love that. I felt like you asked the first question and then kept going.
She didn't leave a gap, right?
I didn't leave the pause. Vulnerability. It's hard.
Yeah. It is genuinely hard to ask the question and leave the gap. It's not what we're used to, but it is such a powerful tool at the end. So I would the close might be, I'd love to run this with you. What date can we do the first trial session?
Let me clarify. That to me, there's still not a close there, right? That still implies a free trial.
Have you suggested the price to them yet, Tallis?
Are we talking real terms in this case with Northwestern?
Yes.
Yes, we have discussed price.
Cool. So we've discussed price. Was that via email or in person?
They asked for an email quote or a quote via email. So I did send them a quote.
Awesome. So they've already got the price. So the close of getting to the date is enough to assume that that's the price is there. So once we've got the date in the diary, then you're sorted on that front. They know what they're going to pay. I would probably reconfirm. Just excellent. So you got the quote. If you're happy with that, let's book the date in the diary. When would you like to do this?
Yes, that sounds much better. And it's amazing how your confidence on that line, as opposed to winging it, if you can get to the place where you know exactly what your final line is going to be. Sure, in between, I'm sure Alan mixes his stuff up all the time based on kind of what he feels is playing well during that particular pitch. There's a lot of riffing that goes on, but I bet you at the end of the day, that final line is locked in. It's absolutely locked in. You don't deviate. Am I right about that?
Every presentation I do, every pitch I do has a close that I've been practicing for many years. So can we go back to the start of the presentation a little bit, or the start of the pitch?
Yeah.
Most people end on Q&A and start with their name and their business, and they waste the two most important parts of their presentation. Mm-hmm. So we've worked on the close, which is a really important part. Let's have a look at the beginning. And I'd like to give you an example that a university used. I think will bring this to life. So I was doing some coaching for Reading University, and they asked me to come in. They had a group of students in the media department who were pitching for a prize from the Volkswagen car group. And the Volkswagen car group were doing this prize. You could win $7,500 plus use of their cars to create a TV advert that they would then put out on their media channels. It was an incredible prize for a group of students to win. And the students at Reading University wanted some coaching to help with their pitch. So I was called in. After coaching them through how everyone else would start, they decided to start a little bit differently. And they went up to the pitch day in London. The other 9 universities who'd been asked in to pitch all started in exactly the same way with, "Hello, I'm Jane. This is Jill, John, Jack, and Jeff, and we're here from Oxford University to talk to you about our car TV advert." They all started in exactly the same way. And if everyone starts in the same way, who stands out?
Well, Alan, of course.
Yeah. The person who does it differently. And Reading University started completely differently. They lined up just as like everyone else did. They did not introduce their names at the start. One of the youngest girls there took like a canister with a horn on top, one of the air horns. And she went straight up to the director of marketing for Volkswagen Cars Europe, put the can next to him and said, "Whatever you do, do not press that." What do you think he's thinking at that point?
I want to press that. Yeah.
Please let me press that. They then delivered their pitch about what the TV advert was. They came right back round to the end, came over to him and said, "Have you been wanting to press the canister?" He said yes. They let him press it. And then they said, "The feeling of desire that you felt wanting to press that horn is the same feeling of desire your customers should feel when they look at your cars." And that's what we're going to show through our car TV advert.
So you used a prop to grab attention, deliver your close, and circle back to the prop as a way to seal the deal.
And it highlighted the main feeling or the main emotion that they wanted to show through what they did.
Yeah, some pathos. Nice.
It was a fantastic close. You know they won the prize. It would be a dreadful story if they didn't win the prize. But the key bit, they never introduced themselves. They didn't have to. They kind of knew, like the people they were pitching to knew who they were. The feedback from who they were pitching to was the best presentation they'd seen, whether from a corporate or a university, and one of them got a job offer from that pitch. And they did something different that made them stand out from everyone else. So I would suggest, like, what can we do that's different that will set a fun mood, bring to life what you're doing? Do we play music and do some dancing at the beginning? What do we do that really grabs their attention, brings it to life, like shows the fun element that really helps these people? How do we bring it to life, Tallis? How can we start to grab their attention?
Yeah, I think the suggestions you threw out were great. You know, being a dance instructor, that's something that I have done in the past, is utilizing music and getting people up out of their chairs. So typically when people are there to listen to a presentation, they're not expecting to be involved in the interaction or even to stand up. So I do like to make people a little bit uncomfortable in that way and get them up on their feet. It kind of relaxes them a little bit and maybe heightens their attention for what I'm about to say. So I think that's a great idea. So I think, not to detour too much, but as you're speaking, this is more along the lines of giving a presentation or a pitch in person. And I imagine that with these pitches that I will be doing to hospitals and clinics around the country, they'll be over the phone. So how do you do something like that when it's not in person?
Over the phone is slightly different because you lose eye contact, you lose body language, you lose a lot of the tools that you would use face-to-face to connect. The question I would ask is, what's the quickest way to engage an audience?
You're looking to get their attention, make them feel something.
Yeah, and what's the quickest way to engage that audience? How do you make an audience think?
Ask them a question.
Absolutely. One of the keys over the phone, and actually in any presentation, is to get the other side thinking. I have a saying for my presentation skills workshops that I run, which is, your moments of impact as a speaker aren't when you're speaking, it's when your audience are thinking. And what's the only time you get someone else thinking?
When you've asked them a question.
Yeah, when you ask a question and go silent. So for me, the keys to pitching on a phone at the start is to ask those questions, to get them thinking, get them chatting, to bring them into the conversation, to get them thinking about what you're doing. Mm-hmm. So I would be asking questions as much as I could at the start to get them engaged. Then we can roll into how you help, but they're already engaged. They're part of the conversation. And it's exactly the same face-to-face with asking as many questions as possible.
Yeah, it seems like a pitch over the phone is much more conversational than typically you see in person, but I don't know why it isn't the case in person more often, actually, because that totally makes sense.
So, Alan, I'd be curious, as we're talking about doing these almost phone call presentations or phone call interviews, I have been in the position of selling stuff over the phone, and I was a little bit at a disadvantage because, Tallis is very passionate. She believes in this product and its ability to solve a problem. I was maybe selling someone else's good and service, and it wasn't necessarily something that I was as passionate about. But I still face the same challenge of when you first get onto a call with someone, and you're right, you can't see them, you can't read body language, you don't know kind of where you stand. You're in this initial meet and greet phase. Do you have any techniques or examples that you could share with us about how you move out of those first minute or two and out of the meet and greet and into really telling them about the benefits of the product that you have and the problem that it solves?
Absolutely. So number one, the sort of when you very first start, it's normally like the hello, how are you? How are you? It's the sort of asking people how they are. It's the first bit. I always try and answer the question, how are you, a bit differently to everyone else out there. And I find it engages people. So most of the time it's like, how are you? Fine. How are you? I'm fine. And it's all a bit perfunctory and boring. What I tend to do is someone asks me how I am. I'll say something like, the sun is shining in Basingstoke, which is surprising. And they won't be expecting that. And it's different and it grabs attention. And it's almost as if you get an instant smile. And that tends to set the scene. And then I'll say, how are you? And then we can kind of get into. So the reason I was calling up today, I'd love to talk to you about this before we get going, just to make sure you're the right person that I should be talking to about this.
I love that. Alan's actually used the sun is shining in Basingstoke line on me more than once. And I smile both times. And I don't even get the irony of that. I don't know what the weather is in Basingstoke. It means nothing to me, but I still smile each time he says it.
There is massive irony in that comment. If you knew Basingstoke, it's not always sunny. It's a little bit grey, definitely at the moment. But it just makes you stand out and creates a connection from moment one. So the second bit is asking, if it's a completely cold call, it's asking if they're the right person to talk to. I would normally then give them permission to get rid of me if they wanted to. Is now a good time for me to chat to you about X? Feel free to say no, tell me when to call back.
So let's tailor this to Tallis. She's on the phone with someone. We need to do a quick, it's a segment to one, differentiate, and then two, it's to make sure we're talking to the right person. So I was calling about doing a partnership with Northwestern to discuss collaborating on PD Moves, a program to help Parkinson's patients with this, with this form of dance. Are you the right person to talk to about this? That's essentially what we're setting up?
I think I wouldn't have collaborated on PD Moves because they won't know what that means. Mm-hmm. I think what I would say, something along the lines of, I run my own little business and we have a program that helps people with Parkinson's move better, connect with other people, and manage and control their emotions. I just wondered, are you the person to speak to that is responsible for helping people with Parkinson's for your hospital? And after we've confirmed that they're the right person, that's when I would probably start with questions rather than going into the pitch. Because first I want to understand. So I'd probably go along the lines of, if this is a completely cold pitch to a new hospital, it's going along the lines of, so what do you do at the moment to help your Parkinson's sufferers to get movement into their life? What do you do at the moment to help Parkinson's sufferers manage what's going on with them? And Tallis will probably come up with way better questions than I do. But those questions at the start is what gets them talking. And they might not have even thought about running something to help their patients like that. So Tallis, what questions would you ask at the start after you found out if they're the right person to talk to or not?
I'm going to steal the one that you threw out there because I think it's a really good one of what are you currently doing to offer programming for your patients with Parkinson's, specifically for movement, with or without music and or dance. I would also ask what are the top 3 symptoms that they see their patients most commonly concerned about and looking to design programming for.
I love that question. That's a fantastic question.
Did you hear the triad there?
I did indeed. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. That then gets them thinking about the problem that you can help them fix, which is why I think it's such a good question. What are the top 3 problems have you got, or your patients have got? And that then gives you the ammunition to say, well, I can help you with those, or I can't.
Right. It sets up that opportunity for the solution, for sure.
And I guess one of the key bits on sales for me is a lot about uncovering whether the person has the problem that I can fix or not. And if they don't, I very much don't want to sell them anything. Like if they really don't need what I'm doing, I won't sell it to them. I just will say, well, it's obviously not right for you. Thanks very much. Because what you're doing isn't right for everyone. What I'm doing isn't right for everyone. What we've got to do is find the people with the problems that we fix. And if they don't have it, then they will respect you for saying thank you very much. That obviously doesn't help you with that. But we're definitely not trying to sell to everyone. We're just trying to find the people that we can help the most. Because there is loads of customers out there that we can work with that would love to have your support.
Yeah, I wonder as I'm reaching out to these hospitals, specifically in the situation of maybe a cold call where I don't already have a connection there, I wonder how many of them have the facilities to allow for the kind of programming. So I would want to know that right from the get-go, because I don't want to set them up to think, oh, this is wonderful, we really want to do this, but they can't. Maybe there are actual limitations with the space or the way that they have their current program set up for it. Maybe they don't even have anything established yet to provide caregiver support or outside of just doctor-patient relationship, extended services type things. Whereas with Northwestern, in this particular scenario, they already have all of that. And they're just looking for me to come in and press go.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we ask those questions right up front to find out if they've got the space, if they've got the appetite, if they've got the program, and if they haven't, is it even something they're considering doing? Then we might go into persuading them that it is trying something they ought to try and do. But understanding space limitations, right person, possibility at the start helps us to know whether our product or service fits what they're doing as we move on. Mm-hmm. So we've looked at opening, we've looked at closing, we've looked at questioning on the phone, we've looked at the power of the pause right at the end. We've looked at quite a lot of different bits. What's the things we've missed for you, Tallis? Is there anything else you need from us?
Well, I wonder about when and if it's appropriate to include pricing in a presentation. It seems like if I was giving a workshop style pitch for a large group of people, no. But in these conversations over the phone, when does that come into play? Because I'm thinking about the close, right? And then there's a pause. And what if their response is, great, everything you've said is awesome. How much does this cost? Is that the ideal question that I get from them? Or is this information that I provide somewhere?
The ideal question is when they ask it at the end. What we want to avoid is when they ask it straight up front. Mm-hmm. Because quite often they're asking the price up the front to know, and then they'll just discount you on price without actually hearing how you benefit people, how you help people. So we definitely don't want it up the front. But if they ask it at the end, it's actually a buying signal. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm interested. It sounds good. How much does this cost? Right. And then we really do want a very straightforward answer. There's lots of advice out there on pricing. Sometimes people say avoid saying the price at all costs until you actually get further into it and they understand it. I don't want to tell them at the start. I'd rather they buy in because of what it'll do for people, and then we'll come to the price at the end. However, I think politicians have caused us a little bit of a problem, and people hate it when you dodge questions.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing we want is to dodge a question. So I have become a lot more straightforward and upfront. If someone asks me the price of my pop-up business school workshops, I have a straight price that I say, this is what a 2-week workshop costs. That's it. And it's a really straightforward price. I do then sometimes, depending on who it is, break it down per person, which does help. Okay. So what I do at the moment, each pop-up business school I run is charged at £21,500. So if you get 100 people to come along to a pop-up business school, that means the 2-week program just costs £215 a head, which makes it really inexpensive for what it delivers.
Mm-hmm.
And breaking it down by per person or per session can actually make it seem a lot more cost effective.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Was I correct in thinking that is exactly what you actually say is the follow-up? So you say, £21,000, and usually typically we're able to service up to 60 people in one of these 2 weeks classes, which breaks it down to roughly £250 per head. Is that built into what you're actually saying, or are you doing the heavy pause just on the final price?
It depends on the situation. Sometimes, like I do the pause straight after the price, it's £21,500. Sometimes I'll do the total price, then the breakdown, then the pause and stare at them.
Yeah. Gosh, I just want to be there for a signature pause for Alan, don't you?
Right?
Like, it's what he lives for. You can see it. Like, he's built everything into this. This tells me how I did. I love it.
One of the things I'd love you to get from this, your ability to dive in and go uncomfortable where no one else will, is directly responsible for the success you get. And the more I'm able to handle tough conversations, uncomfortable pauses, those moments where you say the price and stare them in the eyes, those moments are when you get to where you really want to get to. If you avoid those moments by filling the gap or uncomfortably giggling or whatever it is, it's £21,500. You kind of lost all the power of the close, but your ability to dive in there to those uncomfortable moments and just stare at them is part of the fun.
Right. So, I mean, a lot of what we've talked about at this point is how to subtly find the range without knowing the range. And I'm wondering now if that's not just a limiting belief where we could just go find the range. And, Tallis, I know that one of the things that you had mentioned is we have various hospital institutions, but we also have in the area of Des Moines, Iowa, close to 40 advanced age facilities, retirement facilities that, could be built into a part of this pitch as well. And they already have to have some of these activities. Forget ballroom dance. What other services are being offered to the same community?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was just thinking. It's like, I know that they have regular exercise instructors coming in to do for lack of a better term, like chair exercise, geriatric, exercise in a chair. I know that they're all doing something like that, and they're probably contracting it out in most cases. So yeah, that's where my wheels were turning, is who can I talk to that's doing that, or who can I talk to that's overseeing that and paying these people? What's their budget for paying for that kind of stuff already?
Or indeed ringing competitors in another state that you're not actually a competitor with because you're in a completely different state, and asking them.
Yeah, I think that's
that's it right there. If you're calling another state and you're saying I'm Midwest and I'm looking to offer this service, I'm trying to get a sense for what to charge for these types of classes in my state. What are you paying for these types of activities? What is you could very easily do that. And now you're armed with information and you can build your pitch around that easily.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think I would feel more comfortable going in with an amount of this is my fee, or I can call it that corporate rate, and kind of go from there and have a more solid starting point before I'm just throwing out random numbers.
Absolutely. One last example on pricing that I think to sell more, cheaper is not always better. There was an example for a fabulous book that I read about a tourist shop that was selling jewelry. The shop owner, the jewelry in the front of the shop, wasn't selling. It was just stuck in the shop. The stock just sat there. People came in and looked at it, but they never bought it. She was getting a bit desperate to sell it. So just before she went on holiday, she put, I want this to be put on sale. And she put /2. She went off on holiday. She came back. All the jewellery had sold. So she said to the shop assistant, that half price sale went well, didn't it? And the shop assistant looked a bit confused and said, what half price sale? I thought you meant that I should double the price. And by doubling the price, all of the jewellery sold. What do you think the reason for that is?
So the customers thought it was worth more. So they were getting a better value by paying for that higher price.
Exactly. And like, it's the people who go into the supermarket and they buy the bottle of wine that's $12, not $6. And maybe it tastes better. I don't know. But they feel happier that they've spent a bit more.
Right.
So there is a perceived value that by charging more, people are getting the best. And for some of the institutions you're approaching, they will want the best.
Of course. Yeah. And that's obviously what I want to deliver.
Tallis, what happens next?
I think I just need to get in and make these calls. I mean, I need to do a little more research, but I think I need to actually set up these contracts and get in and start teaching these classes, because that's the only way that I'm going to gather the data that I'm looking for and get the experience to know, okay, do I need to change the pitch? Do I need to change the course? I just think I am ripe to actually go and make the sale.
Yeah, I think so. So in my mind, if we were to hop back on a call in a couple of weeks here, if you had called a list of competitors, a couple competitors that, and I say competitors, if you had called some people that are not competitors in another state, so go California or Midwest, right, and try to get a sense from them, who is a person that can give you a sense of the range that you need to be playing in, and then bring that back and then make 10 to 20 different calls to local facilities and see how that lands. Now we have some information to figure out, what your next move is. I think it all builds from there, because you already know that you can do the class. We just need a framework to replicate in other places. I mean, that's once you have the yes, everything gets easy, right?
Yes. I think I'm just questioning whether or not I need to stay on the track to serve the original mission of approaching kind of like niche facilities with like, this is for people with Parkinson's, or just saying, all right, that's still on the table, but now I'm just going to offer a general movement class for anybody who, lives at this retirement home. And I know that they're all going to benefit from it. You know what I mean? It's like, do I sell it as, hey, I'm an expert in teaching people with Parkinson's disease, or, hey, I'm a ballroom dancer that can help anybody, and here's the class? Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes absolute sense. And I would say that by being the expert in helping Parkinson's, you set yourself out apart from any other ballroom teacher, from any other movement class. If you're just running a standard movement class, you're lumping yourself in with all of the other instructors, and there's not much to differentiate you. So I think the actual mission and what you do does differentiate you and mean we can actually, do what you do to help people. So, yeah, this is a great way to start, and I think it will help. And I think the facilities will have some of the people that you want to support. I guess we can still focus on those people, but allow other people to come in too. But I'd want to hold on to the mission, because I think it differentiates yourself from everyone else that out there that's doing it.
I love that. And from a branding perspective, think about be first or be different. And I love that Alan's pointing out, you don't want to lump in with everybody else. We are different because we have a passion and a focus for helping people with Parkinson's. It doesn't exclude anybody else. And in fact, one other guiding light that I have is you have to pick a niche. You don't have to stay in that niche. You need to be the best of something. You need to have that hook. You need to have that unique selling proposition, but build your brand around that, and then you can extend outwards. And many other brands have done something similar in the past. So yeah, I totally agree with what Alan's saying. And I don't think that one has to preclude the other, but I definitely don't think you should go vanilla and abandon that mission statement.
Yeah, definitely. That's kind of what my gut is leaning toward anyway. But I think I can do them kind of simultaneously as well and continue to focus on the niche and then, like you said, allow the other people to participate.
This is going to work. I mean, I have like no doubt in my mind. This is just, you have an idea. It's a good idea. You don't need to figure out what the model is. It's one that's been done by other people. The only difference between people that have pulled this off and you is that they've already laid this groundwork. They've gone through this process. I don't think you have a ton of competition for people that are aggressively marketing. And if they are, they're not doing it at the local level. You make connections with those people, like you get a sense of their pricing, then you build the business model here in Des Moines. You get it working here, it just works. Then you have one of your friends that's kind of been working with you that's in a different state. You help her set it up there. Now you're a national brand in 2 different states, right? Now you get your coverage from your local media that is talking about this national brand that's really helping this population all over the country. And then you're off. I mean, it's just, and it doesn't have to look exactly like that, but like, it all starts with you just getting it to work with 1 or 2 facilities here in the area and then making it easy for someone to replicate this in another state under your brand.
Sounds good. That just like boosted me. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. You're absolutely welcome. It's doable, right, Alan? This is what it looks like.
It's so doable. No, and I believe that. I totally know that everything you said is true, and I'm excited.
Cool. All right. Awesome. Well, all right. What do we think? How much time do we need, Tallis? You tell us. If we call back in 45 days, can you have called 40 businesses? 30? You can call 30 businesses. You can get 10 of them a free pass.
Oh, you're dropping it to 30? Oh, okay.
Well, I'm saying. I was
gonna take the challenge at 40, but all right. Yeah, I can do that.
All right. So 30 of the 40 businesses you'll have called and you'll have had a conversation with the gatekeeper.
Yeah, and I'm gonna promise I'll have set up 5 classes.
Awesome.
Okay.
Or more. Yeah, it's totally doable. I think it is.
If you need any help, just call me anytime. Like, if the call goes well, tell me. If the call goes badly, tell me. I'd just love to help.
All right, Tallis, you get the final word here. What is the part of this process at this point, with all the strides that you've made and the opportunities that have opened up, what scares you the most right now?
Oh, not selling, probably. I mean, I don't think that that's really going to be the case because I think Alan set me up pretty well to have some successful pitches going here. But I think going back to that idea of being vulnerable, when you are making that pitch and you are putting yourself out there to say, okay, this is my price, this is what I offer, and then pause, that's going to be scary, especially in a cold call situation.
Alan, thanks for keeping us in the loop, man. We look forward to the next uncomfortable pause.
I can't wait. Tallis, go get them and let us know how you get on.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me, you guys.
To our audience, I hope you got value from this idea of understanding how a proper pitch has been built and then learning to lean in to the uncomfortable pause. If you got value from today's episode, if you've been getting value from the episodes up to this point, just take 1 second and press the subscribe button on the platform you're listening to this on. It just lets the providers know you're getting value from the show and you want to be here when we produce additional content. The fire is spreading, my friends. We'll see you next time as we continue to go down the road less traveled.
You've been listening to Choose FI Radio Podcast, where we help middle-class America build wealth, one life hack at a time.